going to go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 3. You can probably mute the speakers on your computers. That way we don't have the feedback. Those of you who are on the internet, obviously you don't want to mute yours. I'm just talking about the students who are here face-to-face in the classroom. So those of you who are in internet land, you continue as you were. But anyway, Chapter 3 is an interesting chapter relating to IT leadership or CIO leadership, but leadership in general and understanding, I guess, this emergent job or career that has kind of opened up for Barton. He's finding out quickly that the staff in IT are a little different, and he's finding out that the culture in IT is somewhat, definitely diverse, highly specialized, and he finds out quickly that he wants to do this powwow with his key supervisors or his key managers, department heads, if you will. And as it turns out that these guys, these department heads, don't know as much about their departments as Barton thinks they should. But the whole chapter is about discovering the IT staffers and their specializations and the culture. It's a little bit different than it would be in the rest of the company, where your traditional business methods apply and procedures apply, especially specifically when it comes to staff and talent. They're just IT is just definitely a different breed of employee or staff in a company. So the first thing I want to do is the opener, and we will. I'll start with Sarah today, since I think I picked on Saleha last week, and we don't have anybody else. So let's tell us about what you found the issue was, your recommendation, and the justification for those recommendations.
So I thought the key issue was that Barton didn't understand the roles of the other managers underneath him. He also did not understand what makes the IT department different compared to the other departments in the company. My recommendation was that Barton should meet with each manager individually to understand the roles of IT. We should also continue to research IT to understand how it works better to help them succeed as a CIO. And my justification was that he should buy some books on IT to understand it better. He asked Ruben, one of the directors, for advice on how each of the groups should operate. He also asked why IT is different from the other departments.
Okay, that's good. So Barton is of course faced with he's going into that basement that we talked about last week, into that liminal setting where he's trying to figure out what he doesn't know. And the first thing he doesn't know is who's working for him. And you're right, Barton needs to figure out what, or actually who is working in his department, and see what weaknesses are there, what challenges are there, what value is there in terms of talent, and trying to understand just a general feel of the culture in the IT department. Let's see if I can maximize this here. So the issues are a little hard to read here. The issues are Barton does not understand his new specialized staff, and that quite a few of you chose that. Barton does not understand the IT culture. So those are the two main issues that I got from the pre-cases that were turned in. If yours is not listed, I probably blended them into those two groups because that's generally the feel for the chapter. Some of the, I don't know if this can, oh, there we go. That's a little bit better. Some of the recommendations are, that I uncovered, meet with all for developing a strategy meeting, continue to tap into Maggie's expertise and connections to CIOs, which Maggie's turning out to be a great networking opportunity there. Take a company survey to understand IT-related issues, and not sure what they mean by company survey other than to just ask all the employees of the company if everything's working fine from an IT perspective. They may want to look at it from an employee perspective versus a customer's perspective and so on. Develop a listening attitude as opposed to a listen to me attitude. Plan weekly meetings. Keep in mind the gravity of the huge job ahead of him, and what works in loan operations stays in loan operations. Okay. So essentially, taking the experience from his previous gig is probably not a good idea, considering the culture in IT, and we're going to look at that a little closer now. So let's take a look at the justifications for those recommendations. He, as in Barton, dismisses Reuben as someone who has career fatigue and assumes he is collecting a paycheck along with his quote-unquote sidekicks. He buys a carload of books to binge IT concepts in a weekend. See how well that turns out. In IT, reliance on expert subordinates is unavoidable, and Barton begins to realize he will need to return to some books, or need to return some books, as his approach to study the team into submission would not likely work. So all these are good justifications for really kind of putting Barton's preconceptions about the IT department or the information management department, information department, if you will, kind of put those to rest, because he's quickly finding out that IT is a loaded bee's nest. And if he doesn't tread lightly, he may not have any staff left to work with. So let's take a look at some of the related issues that we're going to discuss today and come back to over the course of the semester. Barton may need to approach this team in a new way, realizing the limited availability of talented, specialized, and commonly quirky individuals. Barton should use a surgical tray and not a steamroller to get IT and IVK into shape. Let's stop at that one, a surgical tray versus a steamroller. What do you think is meant by that?
I think he needs like to be more precise instead of just trying to mix everything all together and possibly like smashing the whole concept to begin with. So I think that's really what they need, because a steamroller is big, so you can obviously move and push more stuff. It's like a surgical tray. It's specific things that you use during the operation.
Right. So in the IT world, IT is more of a surgical tool as opposed to like in loan operations or sales or marketing. There are some tools of the trade there, uh, but those tools of the trade have been around for years and years. And we're talking in IT, we're talking about something, an organization that's only been developed within the last 30 to 40 years. And so it's developed very quickly as IT continues to evolve. The specializations in IT continue to evolve, which means that you can't just simply take what you've always known in terms of a management tool or a management methodology and apply it to the IT department as a whole. You can't just write a memo and say, everybody has to do this because this is just the way it's done. Everybody has to use a specific application in a certain way just because they did it that way in loan operations. It's just not going to work that way. IT has a very specific set of tools, not skills, but tools, and they have skills too. But and they have to use those tools in different types of ways, whether it be troubleshooting, creating in terms of software screens or software algorithms and things of that nature, coming up with ways to optimize the number of people on servers and make sure they're balanced throughout the entire organization. These are all things that just traditional business roles do not have to deal with. They don't have to just hire enough people to make calls. And of course, if the call center or the telephone system's overwhelmed, who are they going to call? They're going to call somebody specialized. The people in that department are not going to fix their own phones. They're going to call somebody, most likely in IT, to fix those types of things. And so you need to have someone who's specialized in that type of phone system in order to fix it. So that's why you need the surgical tray. You can't simply just apply some type of just generalized tool or process, generalized business process, and apply it to IT. It just won't work, given the examples I've already offered. Barton has room to change some staff, but for the most part, he must work with what he has if he's to move quickly on to solving the big problems at IBK. Because we don't even know what the big problems are yet. They just know there are big problems. They've changed their CIO. Clearly, there was a problem there. And so Barton definitely needs to switch gears pretty fast and figure out what those big problems are and who it is in his department that can fix them. And it may not be just within his department to fix some of these things. There may be some other issues higher up in management that where they need to drive some policy changes in order for the IT area for them to get behind those policy changes and make changes within the IT department to support those priorities. Ruben may not be the only and certainly not the best source for understanding the complexities of the IT culture and talent at IBK. That's right. I mean, Ruben is just one person. IT is a large organization. IBK is a large organization. So you're not, I know a lot of, or many managers seek to find someone who is their whisperer, if you will, the person that's going to help translate that department for them. Who are the best people, who aren't the best people. And Martin is trying to find that guy, but he's quickly finding out he's not going to be able to find a person like that, mainly because the ITers, this includes the department heads, aren't really sure about Barton yet. They don't know what his agenda is, and they don't fully trust him. And they feel like he's just someone chosen to probably just be the hatchet man, right? To go through IT and try to find the problems, or try to get rid of what we called earlier dead wood within the department, and then move on, or go back to his position in loan operations, or just leave the company. Uh, but the trust issues are in place, and that comes out in that meeting that Barton has with the department heads. So we all need to get together. Barton wanted to have that little powwow, that retreat, if you will, and they wanted to talk about the problems in IT, and the problems that face the business from an IT perspective, and how we go about solving those problems. And the department head said, well, it can't just be just the five of us, because, hey, there's a lot about some of these systems I don't know, and I need my subject matter experts in order to offer suggestions, offer justifications behind some policies in IT, and so on. So it can't just be the department head. The department head knows the basic policies within that department, and executes those policies, and they try to drive them, but at the same time, uh, there's probably, because of the previous CIO, there is no direction, there's no mission statement for IT, and we'll get into that a little bit later, with respect to everybody looking at the same goals and the same agenda within IT in order to make certain initiatives happen. And what is a white hat anyways? Anybody know that? Yep. Leah?
Those are the good guys. As far as like I swear, like as far as I believe hacking and everything, like they help people, and I think the black hats they're kind of more into like the dark side of the internet and stuff, and like they will like hack your information and like get like your personal information, like things like that.
Right, right. A white hat hacker is simply a hacker. They're all hackers. The difference between a white hat and a black hat, a white hat is generally interested in finding holes to make systems better. And it seems that there may have been some kind of issue related to security that might have caused some issues, although Cho, they still regarded very highly. So that's probably not the case, or he would probably have been fired. But Cho, they seem to regard him as someone who who knows what he's doing. He's the head of security in terms of cybersecurity, and he's one of the reasons why I guess maybe IVK is not completely dead in the water. And so they wanted to have a meeting without him, who is the cybersecurity guy. And you don't know if in this case IVK is experiencing any problems with security or leaks or what have you. But we will certainly find out in the future. Tensions in IT are very high, as I mentioned earlier. Barton should be relieving some of those tensions soon before he has a personnel gap. So yes, there's a lot of mistrust at this point. I've personally been in an organization where there's a lot of leadership change. I went through 5 board or the board at our company was just replaced completely. All the department heads were replaced completely. I was really the only, me and the CFO, we were really the only people left from the original group that started with the company. So it's pretty unnerving when you see your superiors just move on, and then you get a whole new set of peers to work with, uh, every year for about 3-4 years, we were it was complete imbalance in the company I was at before I came here to USC Upstate. So I understand how nervous IT could be. They don't know if the company's going to be around. They don't know if the their jobs are going to be around. They don't know the intentions of Barton. They just know that he's not an ITer, and that's really all they know at this point. And they're very nervous. And so Barton needs to walk on eggshells because if you haven't noticed, IT is a very demanding field, in not terms of what you do. It definitely, in terms of the job itself, is demanding, but it's an in-demand field in that there aren't that many individuals that have the skills to do the job well. Specifically when it gets into analytics and number crunching and cybersecurity. And that's why we offer at USC Upstate these types of programs to allow students to get into this field that is still very high demand. Now, you might have noticed some big companies out there uh, issuing layoffs and things of that nature, executing layoffs and paring back on staff. Well, I'm here to tell you, IT is going to be around. The foundation of business is IT. It's going to be around. Those people who left are like the top of the IT world in terms of programming, social engagement, AI, and such like. And many of the people that were laid off in like your Facebooks and your Twitters and all of that weren't all engineers, or very few of them were engineers. They were mostly optimizers, people who they were just the human aspect of the algorithms that are used to tell you what, or tell the system what should go in front of the user. And so um, they might have overhired a little bit in the past couple of years. And so these companies are paring back a little bit. But I'm here to tell you that the needs are still very great, not just in the state of South Carolina, but globally for IT people. And so you're in the right place when it comes to the IT career, the information sector, because there's only going to be a certain subset of the population that's going to be able to understand these concepts and be able to drive them properly within the IT organization. But with that said, the tensions are high. Barton might have a problem replacing people, good people, if he decides to step on some toes. So he has to step back and not generalize with that steamroller and really take that scalpel, take that pencil, and try to understand who his staff is and make some surgical moves and not steamroller moves. How should IT deal with gaps and impediments in the way the rest of the company works? Yeah, but I don't think we're there yet in terms of that justification. But it is good to at least put out there. But at this point in time, we can't even talk about. Well, I guess we could talk about impediments and barriers, but we don't even know who the staff is yet. So we really can't even get into the barriers yet because that really hasn't been given to us as part of the case yet in this chapter. All right, so that takes us to our next order of business, which is the live activity. If I can get back into let's see, let's go back in here. Let's stop. we'll jump into the module here and we'll get into the think pair groups and go a little deeper into IT leadership and ask some questions. There are more questions this time, so we're going to spend a little bit more time on this. Probably, yeah, I don't know, we'll still do the 20 minutes, but question 5 is going to be going to take you a little bit more time. You can choose 1 through 4, how you want to answer those. But number 5, I'm going to assign. So let's see here who we got. So Logan, you'll take the software side on the question, on the IT question. Let me get back to that. What specializations exist in infotech? So we're going to do a little bit of discovery in question 5. We're just going to do some Google searches or what have you. And we're going to find specializations in IT, and you'll be surprised at how many there are and why a scalpel is needed and not a steamroller. So we have software, hardware, networking, and security. So Logan takes software, Saleha can take the hardware side, Sarah the networking, and Zach, you'll take the security, cybersecurity side. And what I want you to do is just write a small list of, whenever you do your searches, look for IT specializations. You can just put that into Google, or job specializations. I'll get it out. And just write down 5, 6, or 7 different specializations for the category I gave you. And hopefully I'll remember later which ones I gave to who, but we'll get there. I think I just went from the top to the bottom, so it should be pretty easy. The software, let's see here. Yeah, software, hardware, networking, security. All right, so in addition to the first 4 questions, also look up specializations, and then at 20 after, 3:20, we will come back together and talk about the answers to these questions. Are there any questions at this point on what we should be doing? Should be pretty self-explanatory. Should be a fun, because most of you are probably wanting to know what this field is all about and what opportunities are out there. So this is a perfect opportunity to find an area that may interest you. Okay, so I'll put the questions back up and come back to you at 3:20. All right, I'm calling everybody back to, let's take a look here, focus on the conversation and the activity, and to determine the results of the questions, the answers to the questions that have been posed. And we'll start with number 1. Who wants to take that question and answer? See if anybody's posted anything online. Hang on, let's go back. Let's take a look at Zach's explanation. IT management is management, or is it? Agree or disagree? Oh, wait a minute, hang on a second. He was listing, sorry. He was listing the questions when I accidentally moved. Okay, hang on a second. See if anybody answered. One. Okay, Zach said, I agree with the statement, but IT management is different because you manage technology and the hardware and not the people. I can agree with that to some degree. Yes, indeed, the information, technology, hardware need to be managed, but the people do as well. And I think this is a big part of the problem. I think managing things is a lot easier than people. Managing people is a minefield. And in IT, yes, you have to manage people. In fact, that is one of the biggest problems with IT promoting from within to department manager, IT director, all the way through to the CIO. If you're not good at understanding people and what drives them, you're not going to be able to manage them. And ITers, for the most part, are at least the ones that I've known and worked with over the years, are not people. They like the technology. They like to manage the technology, and that's great. We need people focused on that. But we also need good managers. And we also need people who can manage people. I do like the answer to the question, though, because it does kind of drive the misconceptions of IT and IT management, and that you only have to worry about what's on a system and not worry about who's working with the system or manipulating the system and so on, and driving policy so that the system works for the good of the company. What about question 2? Anybody want to take that one? How do you learn a new tech? You want to take it, Celia?
I didn't really realize it said tech, but when I learn something, I do research on the topic and I try and look for like credible sources, books, people, videos, and then I also try and do like trial and error. I feel like, especially like with a professor or something, because I feel like if I do it and then he can tell me what's wrong, I can better learn versus just doing it by myself. So that's how.
Right. And yeah, it didn't have to necessarily be a new tech. It can be a new anything. And I put a new anything in there because when we think about learning anything new, we tend to just kind of step back a little bit. We're like, is it really even worth it to learn a new tech, or learn how to, I don't know, use a different type of weed eater or mower, or some other type of software that will be used to get your job done. And the way you learn is just as important to what you learn. And in my courses, I try many different ways of getting students to try to learn something new and to use a new technology. And that will force them into seeking out the information, as Saleha offered, in terms of looking up YouTube videos, looking up Google how-tos, going to the manufacturer's manual, right? Just try not to figure things out on your own. I think many of us want to short circuit that process. We don't want to read through all the boring technical details. We just want to get the one thing done and to get through it. But the problem is you miss a lot of detail and you spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out what you're doing wrong when the detail that you needed was in the instructions or in the YouTube video or in the white paper or what have you. So how you learn something new is important. And I think Barton, in his quest to understand IT and all the different facets of IT, I think he was on the right track in terms of reaching out to support systems and resources that work for him, because he probably just found a book on managing people whenever he needed to start managing the loan operations department or whatever department he started with. And that seemed to work for him. And the problem with IT is there are so many books and so on, and so many different specializations that we'll talk about in a minute, that there's no way he could, within 3 years, read about all these different specializations. And he found out quickly it was information overload. And so it's important that when we learn a new thing, that we manage our expectations and drive the use case, the reason why we need to use that thing, the reason why we're learning it, and try to be as detailed as possible, and in terms of everything about the aspect. For example, the weed eater scenario, how to replace the little twine and all of that in the weed eater. You need to know those details, even though at the time it's a brand new weed eater. All you gotta do is hit the button and watch it work, or plug it in, or if it's battery operated, put the battery in it, right? There's all these details. And you have to know those things before you can even get started. And what happens when you run out? You got half the yard done, you don't have enough twine left in the weed eater, and your yard looks like crap because, well, you didn't research how to replace that little spool, or you didn't buy any extra spools because they told you to. And so when learning something new, yes, the resources are important. Definitely learn from somebody who is an authority. Get the citations. When it comes to something related to academia, you definitely need the sources. I think if you're dealing with a weed eater, I think just a general YouTube video ought to be fine. I don't think you need to cite that. But when it comes to something new in terms of a process, we definitely need to make sure that our resources are good. All right, number 3, how does Barton think he'll learn the technical side of IT? Sarah, could you answer that one?
I said, you think you'll learn the tech side by reading some books. With IT changing rapidly, you should leave the details to the subject matter experts, because they are more familiar with the IT details. As CIO, you should focus on the bigger picture.
Yes, but he has to kind of know both, right? How is he supposed to make a decision if he doesn't have all the information, right? So the CIO needs to know enough about, and it's that balance. And I think that's what the chapter's really honing in on is, yes, you need to worry about the 30,000-foot view of the department and let the staff do their jobs and not micromanage. But at the same time, you need to be able to detect deficiencies. And the way you do that is set up metrics, right? Each department, each specialization has a series of inputs and a series of outputs in terms of what their systems do. And they have metrics on how well systems are working, software systems, servers, networking, all of that. They all have some type of diagnostic that can be used as a tool of determining the health of any system. And so the CIO and the department manager should be collecting metrics, should be collecting data for metrics that help see the health of each one of those specializations within the IT department. You don't necessarily have to know how to add a user to Active Directory, but you need to know how many users are being added to the Active Directory and how many of those were successful, and how many people were fired and weren't removed, and those are all metrics. Those are all things that are you look at in terms of the health of a system, the health of the entity. So leave the subject matter experts to dealing with the details of working and manipulating the systems, but come up with ways to find out what it is, the problems that are related to those systems, and where there are failures, and where there's room for improvement, and where things are working very well that you could apply in other areas of the IT department and possibly even the company. So yes, Barton should leave the details to the subject matter experts, but at the same time, he should know enough to be able to create metrics to know whether or not that specialization is healthy and is performing the function as required in the business. How much should Barton push to know what he does not know when it comes to infotech? And I think we already kind of drove that. I'm not going to answer that one again because I think we've asked and answered that one over and over enough. So we'll just jump to 5. So who is software? I think that was Logan. Okay, so for software, the different specializations are software engineers, project managers, technical support specialists, programmers, software developers, and program managers. And each of those, yes, is a specialization in itself. A software engineer is someone who essentially writes the code and makes sure that the specification that's given to him works exactly the way it is quote unquote specified. And the project manager makes sure that there are software engineers and technical support specialists and programmers and software developers all working together to meet a specific goal or to produce a specific either software application or something about that application. Technical support specialists are just that after the software has been deployed by the project team, coded by the engineers and so on. The specialists will know the system about as well as the engineers and be able to offer help to the end users, whether they be people in the company or customers or what have you. And you have the programmers, which software engineers and programmers. Software engineers might be a little more adept. They're probably more senior than just a general coder programmer. The coder programmers generally have other tasks, the data manipulation and things of that nature. And then software developers, you can kind of interchange programmer and software developer, depending on the role. If there's a creation involved, software creation involved in terms of GUI and things like that, you could essentially put the developer more into a bit of a higher role, probably even above an engineer, someone who needs to kind of understand the requirements and realize those requirements into a use case. So software developers are usually more adept at the use case side of things as opposed to a programmer who really is essentially a coder. And then you have a program manager that applies the software throughout a company, like you have a program manager for something like SAP. So SAP has been deployed, and then you need to make sure that there is an SAP SME or subject matter expert on staff to understand how well the system is being applied based on the business goals. People don't put money into SAP ERP system unless there's some return on investment. And so program manager is big on making sure that the goals of that system are carried out. All right, so that's the software side. Then we have the hardware. Who had hardware? Let's see here. Hardware. hardware. Hang on, let me look. Solea had hardware. Solea.
Let's see here. As far as computer hardware, hardware is like the physical components of the computer that makes the computer run. Um, Computer hardware, like engineers, so when they would design like hardware systems and test them, and manage them, and manage those products. They're more for like full like hands-on people and whatnot, like in the computer like field and everything. They would like redesign the computer if something is like wrong, like for example like if the fan, like if the computer's running hot, then like they would redesign like the fan or whatnot to the computer so they can like make the computer do whatever it is that it needs to do. So yeah.
Right. So you have your hardware specialist. I can guarantee you that everything, even though there's this thing called the cloud, you can reduce everything down, even though there's satellites involved, Wi-Fi is involved, everything comes down to a physical unit. Data still sits, for the most part, in physical drives somewhere on the planet, whether it's under the ocean, on land, in huge warehouses or what have you. The stuff isn't just in ether. It's not just sitting in the air. It is in a physical location. And I think those of us who use these systems tend to forget how much hardware is kind of overlooked now because they just assume hardware just works. When was the last time you saw Facebook shut down, right? Just for a month, right? Or even a few days. When was the last time you saw Twitter or any of your huge infrastructures shut down? It's rare. Systems like Netflix and your streaming services, they have to have total uptime. And all of those software systems are sitting somewhere on a physical device. And you need hardware engineers that walk into a data center and make sure that the systems are working properly, switching out drives and so on, thousands and thousands of drives and CPUs, just racks and racks, miles and miles of it. In some cases, you've got two big players, your Amazon web or your Amazon web services, and you have, or AWS, and you have your Azure, your Microsoft, and you have many others that offer these cloud infrastructures, these cloud servers, and they have people who work with the actual hardware, that work with the actual bits and bytes on the servers. So yes, hardware people, if there's any place that someone in this program can start, it's in the hardware side, the support side, and get to learn in a data center, even if it's a very small one, a small business. Just about every business has some type of server setup, some kind of back room where they need someone to specialize in the hardware, replacing the actual unit or replacing something related to it, a drive or in Soleil's case, a fan or what have you. And let's see, networking. Networking, okay.
I found wireless network security administrator, a network security analyst for information assurance engineer, firewall administrator, a digital crime analyst, and a computer infrastructure protection specialist.
Right. You'll notice there's some carryovers when we talk about cybersecurity in a second. Networking and cybersecurity are almost intertwined with one another, but you have what's called your local area networks, which are your internal within a building. You have all your wires within the building and devices connected, and you have that type of network capability, and of course your Wi-Fi's, and you can have specializations in just the wiring, just the Cat6 and so on, wiring within a building, and you also have specializations in just the Wi-Fi and making sure that the radios aren't interfering with one another. So just within the networking alone, there are several specializations that are required. And even in your companies like Amazon Web Services, where they have these content area networks, or CANs, they are physical systems, but they're regionally based in different countries, and they just have clusters of information that's the same mirrored in many locations all over the world. And you have people who are on the networking front in charge of making sure those content area networks are optimized and running as they should. Now for security, the last one, let's see, I think that was an online person. Hang on, let's go back over here. I think it was Zach, yeah. Hang on, let me get back into chat here. Okay, so when it comes to cybersecurity, yeah, there's quite a bit. It is a growing beast of a, that's why we offer a full program in cybersecurity, not just in our program, but in computer science, where you can actually get a major in cybersecurity. But you have architect and policy, data loss prevention, governance, risk and compliance, identity and access management, incident response and forensic analysis, penetration testing, it just, the list goes on. There are so many jobs available for cybersecurity. So if you're not looking into one of those, that's where the opportunities are in the next 10 years, is in cybersecurity, because we are a connected world, will remain a connected world unless we have the largest sunspot ever wipe out all technology on the planet, which is probably not going to happen. So we will have jobs for many, 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 many years to come when it comes to the cyber security side of things. And the biggest problem with cybersecurity are the end users. It's really not the routers. The routers are great. The policies on the routers are great. The incident management could be better when it comes to breaches and that sort of thing. But the reason breaches occur is due to poor cyber hygiene. And it's up to you and me. That's the biggest role of all. Those of us, when we read emails, when we get text messages that ask us to change our passwords from people we don't know, and we go in and change the password because, hey, I just got a message that said to change my password. Well, you just gave your password to somebody. So those of us on the end user side need to practice better data and cyber hygiene so that we know the pitfalls. And it starts there. Really, cybersecurity starts with us, and then we can jump into some of these other things. If you're interested in those types of things as a career goal, let me know. We've got programs and classes that you can take to be better at that, and you could land some really cool, high-paying jobs in the cybersecurity arena. All right, I'm not going to go into all these different job types in cybersecurity because they are very technical on their own. It would take an entire class period just to talk about each one of those different options, and we're out of time anyway. So does anybody have any questions about Barton and his ragtag team of misfits that he is now in charge of? All right, well, the story continues, chapter 4. Let's take a look next week. Come back. I appreciate everybody who's joining. And looks like everybody's got a good handle on the way the course is moving along in terms of deliverables. So thank you all for being so diligent, and we'll see you next week. Catch you later. Bye-bye.